Good evening. Welcome. We're so happy you're here. Thanks for joining us for What's Next? Finalizing your college decision and planning for success in the transition to college. I'm Will Cayer. Also here tonight is Lauren Dodington. We are managing partners at the Best U and advisors. And we are so excited to welcome our friend and guest with us tonight, Brandon Slade. He is the founder of UnTapped Learning. UnTapped is an organization on a mission to unlock students' potential, and they're doing amazing work. So we're so excited to have Brandon joining us, and he's got some incredible information to share with you tonight that I hope you find very valuable. We are going to start with just some, some logistical and organizational things that we want to make sure you're paying attention to as you approach this May 1st deadline that I know is on many of your minds. We are in April, so we are, just a couple of weeks away from that important date. And, if you're lucky enough to have a couple of colleges that you are deciding between, right now, a couple of reminders as you think through that. First of all, stick to it. Start with you. This is where the process has begun and where it needs to finish, because we're not going to let the rankings or the lists, your peers or everyone else, let those expectations go of everyone around you and focus inward on what you need to thrive as you make this final decision, what you need to thrive personally and academically. That's not to say don't listen to your team. Certainly bring in those opinions and use them to your advantage. But at the end of the day, this needs to be truly about you. You may have noticed that as you're making a decision, there are some new resources that are coming across for you, like admitted students days, opportunities to engage with the college as an admitted student for the first time. And I hope you've been taking advantage of those. And if not, there's probably a couple more opportunities before May 1st. To engage with the college as an admitted student. And that is just another way to better understand an institution and see about that fit that we've been working so hard to find for you. Part of that, if you do have questions that arise about a university, contacting the admissions rep is a great route to take. This is a person who is excited to talk to you, right? Like they read your application, they enjoyed what they saw enough to say, admit this student, and they might have fought for you at committee and really, worked hard to help you get admitted. And they would love to hear from you. So if questions pop up, don't be afraid to reach out to your regional representative. If you can't find your regional rep, just contact general admissions and they'll point you in the right direction. Lastly, be realistic about finances and travel. I know that this decision is not made in a vacuum, right? Like you have to think about all the different pieces that play into the puzzle here, and thinking about the affordability side of things and what it costs to go to a college is oftentimes part of that conversation. And it's not just the award letter that you've received from the university, but it's all the other costs too. I want to make sure you think about, you have to pay for books, you have to pay to get to the school, you have to pay for all these indirect expenses that will pop up. So just keep all those in your mind as you are piecing together all of the different pieces of the puzzle to make that final decision by May 1st. Lauren's going to take over here. She is on mute, so we're going to ask her to pull that off and then she'll jump in here.
Thanks, Will.
Take here. Yep.
Yeah, so once that final decision is made, there's a couple of really important things to know about and to think through. The first is the national deposit deadline is May 1st. And it's important to know sometimes students and families get into a space where they say, gosh, we really haven't finalized this decision. We need some more time. Could we just go ahead and deposit to school A and school B? And the answer is no. Please do not do that. You've got to hone in on one school by May 1st and make that deposit. The key reason for that is colleges actually can find out if a student has double deposited. There's a national clearinghouse that shares information that is readily accessible to them. So you'd never want to put yourself, your student, in that position. So you've got to hone in on what that one school is. And in fact, when students apply, part of the common application, they're actually signing a little contract every time they submit an application. And one of the things that they commit to is that they will only deposit. They understand they can only enroll at one institution. So when you're ready to do that, follow college's steps to confirm enrollment and verify that there's not a separate housing process to deposit or to indicate that you are seeking housing. Sometimes those can function as two separate processes. Particularly, you'll see that at larger universities. So know that, really look through the information that the college has sent you over email, in your portal, on their website. Reach out to them and ask them questions. Like Will alluded to, listen, they want the students who they admitted to enroll. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions if you have them. Sometimes you will also encounter something where you're feeling a little bit of pressure from the institution to go ahead and make that deposit before May 1st, either because they're telling you housing is going to fill on a first come, first served basis, or something like an honors program, a special program might be filled as they go along. So while a college cannot require you to deposit before May 1st, they can fill on a first come basis for particular opportunities like that. So again, really just look into what that information is, ask the questions at your college. The other piece is, once you've made that enrollment deposit and clicked the box, signed the form that says I'm enrolling, housing deposit if that's required, those aren't the only steps. So you do want to make sure that if you are receiving merit aid, scholarships from that institution, or need-based aid, you have to actually go through and accept your financial aid as well. So it's important to just continue to read through everything that is sent to you and make sure that you are checking all of those boxes to really close out that final decision. Continue to keep up. The college is going to send you more information, right? There will be more steps that are coming down the road. And there will be deadlines for things like orientations, course registration, filling out housing surveys to indicate your preferences. So make sure that your student is really keeping on top of that. Those communications do not come to parents, right? Parents only get contacted about the cost, the payment. They don't get contacted about, hey, your student didn't fill out this questionnaire that's going to place them into their freshman course. So it's really important to just get in that habit early of checking email on a daily basis, checking that portal that's provided for your institution, make sure that you are covering all your bases. On the note of not that pleasant, but really important things to know, every single student is going to be required to provide a final high school transcript. That's the transcript that closes out at the end of this school year after you have graduated. And that's kind of the final step to complete your enrollment. At some institutions, you can't register for classes until that is received. So the high school typically is going to send that on your behalf, and a student needs to coordinate with their school counselor about making sure that that's sent. But the important piece here is the college you're enrolling at will see your final grades. So does that mean if you got 1C, they're going to revoke your acceptance? No. But if there's a very dramatic change, if you dropped classes that they understood you to be taking, or if there's a dramatic change in the academic performance, that can have implications for a student, such as being put on academic probation at the time of enrollment in that first semester. So we don't want any surprises, right? You really got to hold strong till the end of the year, finish strong and close out well so that you're in a good place as you begin. Another thing to note, sometimes if a student applied with test scores and they self-reported, you put them in the Common App, said, okay, here's my SAT score. Some colleges are going to require that students send their official score reports from the College Board or from the ACT testing agency directly to the institution. That's another kind of box that has to get checked to close out the process. If you applied test optional, obviously that's not going to be a part of your process, but it's just another important thing to note. This is also the point where a lot of families start to think about, okay, you took all these AP classes. Hey, how are we going to get credits for these? How does this work? That process and that policy is going to be different at every institution. So this is the time to go ahead and really read the fine print and understand what that's going to be at your college, what information you need to provide, including your official score reports from the College Board, and how that will be applied to kind of the overall picture of your credits. So last but not least, we know many students and families are weighing out wait lists right now. A lot of waitlist decisions went out. They always do, but especially this year, I think we've seen an increase. So it's important to know a few things about that. The first is waitlists can be highly unpredictable, right? It's just really, really hard to know. That's literally why a college creates a waitlist, because they're waiting to see how things are going to shake out. So what will happen there if you go ahead and accept a spot on a wait list? Couple things are really key. The first is you've got to have a plan A. If you are holding out for a wait list, you need to identify the college that's going to be your plan A that you are going to deposit to and complete all those enrollment steps. And we want you to get invested and excited in that school, right? Because we don't know what might happen with the wait list. You want to really make sure that you're moving forward in a positive direction, envisioning yourself at that plan A school. Complete all the steps that are asked or offered to hold your spot on the wait list. And these are going to vary by institution. So yes, there'll be kind of a form usually online to indicate that you want to retain your spot. Some colleges will accept updates, or they will accept a letter of continued interest, an email or something that a student submits through the portal that communicates what's been happening since the time their application was reviewed and supports their candidacy on the wait list. Not all colleges will accept that, but if they do, go ahead and take advantage of those opportunities. You can also check the stats on last year's waitlist numbers. So College Transitions provides their Dataverse. You can literally just Google College Transitions waitlist statistics. This is the link right here. And that will show you any colleges that publicly report that data about how many people they put on the waitlist and how many people they took off. You can see that. That's not a guarantee that that's what will happen this year, but it is a good indicator of what that has historically looked like if you're trying to understand how realistic it might be to be offered a place off of the waitlist. The last piece to know is if you are offered a spot off the wait list, it's going to happen after May 1st, right? So they need to see kind of where they landed at that enrollment deadline and then determine if they have additional spots to fill. So it could come right away, May 2nd, or it could come later down the road in June or even into July. At that time, when you get contacted by the college and said, you know, hey, we're offering you a spot off of the wait list, would you like to enroll? You're typically going to have to make that decision relatively quickly. And it's important to know that if you jump to accept that wait list spot, you are forfeiting your deposit at that plan A school, that first institution where you deposited. So that's just important to know. For some students and families, that's worth it, but there's no kind of contesting that or asking for your money back from that first school. So these are really the key things that you're thinking about right now as you're working towards finalizing that decision. At this point, we want to go ahead and turn it over to Brandon to talk about what comes next from here and really making a successful and smooth transition to a thriving life in college. So I'll kick it over to you, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you so much. And great reminders. I figured out that colleges see your last high school transcript way too late in the process. So definitely caused some unnecessary drama there. But yeah. So thanks so much for having me. So I'll give my quick background in a sec, but we're going to talk a lot about how to transition to college successfully and specifically about executive function skills. So I'll talk a lot about what those are and why those are the key skills we need to develop in this transition to college. But yeah, I've known the best of you for a long time and I'm super grateful to be here and love the work that they do. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. So here's what we're going to go through. And the great news is that there's a handful of us here, so we can ask a lot of questions if you like. Probably go over too much material quickly, but feel free to ask a ton of questions in the chat. And the goal of this is to be as concrete as possible. So if there's something you don't quite understand, just let me know. So I'll just give a quick background on myself and why I may or may not be the right person to talk about this. What executive functioning is, why it's so important for your transition to college, how we can develop those skills now, and then what we can do for the remainder of the school year and over the summer to make sure we step foot on campus ready to go. A lot of people don't realize that amygdala is firing for like the first month when you're on campus. You're right in fight or flight. You're in a brand new environment. It's the biggest transition in our life, going from all this structure to very little structure. And so we want to set everything up beforehand to make sure that we're good to go. So here's my quick background. Because I was raised in Boulder County. And I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 5. So I had the best type of ADHD, I tell people. I had the type of ADHD where I was flipping desks and jumping on, excuse me, jumping on chairs. And I had teams of people in the school district come to watching me and trying to figure out what was wrong with this kid. The reason I say that's the best type of ADHD is because we see so many people who kind of figure this out later in life where, you know, they figure out something's not quite right because they were so intelligent that they got through high school and middle school and everything was fine. So that may or may not be some people here, but I got a lot of attention early on. I had a ton of academic struggles throughout middle school and high school, but it wasn't until I left Boulder County, went out to Ohio on a football scholarship where things kind of blew up and I just bombed and failed out right away. I couldn't manage the academic with the athletic, the social, and the stuff we're going to talk about today, whether you have a neurodiversity or not. We're going to talk about the skills needed to be successful, excuse me, in college. So that's where I struggled. So I had to figure all of these skills out the hard way and really how to transition to not take the long way around. Then I taught special education, focused on ADHD in Boulder Valley School District for 12 years, and then founded what we're doing now about 5 years ago called UnTapped Learning. We work with about 200 kids in this area. We work with kids at 60 different universities right now, helping them with these skills and with this transition. And then something new for us is we just started working with universities. So the same talk I'm giving you is what we give to college professors at colleges throughout the country, teaching them how to develop these skills so everyone can be on the same page about how to successfully help kids transfer. So that is my background. So before we dive in, let's talk about what executive functioning and executive function skills are. So again, if you have a neurodiversity in some capacity, we really struggle with these skills. Even if you don't, they are essential in a successful transition to college. So the most basic way we talk about your executive function skills is the complex set of cognitive processes that work together so you can achieve your goal. Your goal may be something big, like in high school, making the varsity soccer team or being star of the musical, or in college, being, getting your degree in electrical engineering. Or it may be something small, like getting out the door and getting on time, getting to class on time every single morning, or simply paying attention. Whatever your goal is, it's your executive function skills that get you there. We see these be absolutely essential when we start to get independence in life, which is what I know a lot of us are working towards and what we're launching to. So that's what your executive function skills are. Here's what they are made up of. So they're made up of time management, organization, we'll talk about organization in a sec, focused attention, impulse control, task initiation, and just as a quick side note, task initiation is what we've seen plummet post-COVID. For so many of us at the college level and the end of high school, simply getting started on the task is like 90% of it. You've seen us a ton of struggles with getting started. So we'll talk about how to improve that. Emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, planning and problem solving, verbal and working memory, and metacognition. Metacognition is just a fancy word for thinking about how you think or self-assessment. If we can really work on this self-assessment piece and figure out what time of day we focus best, what time of day we retain the most information, what time of day we have the most energy, then we can start to develop routines around this. When to go to the library, when to plan our classes out, when to get our movement or exercise in. So we're going to talk about how to improve that as well. So that's what falls under the executive function umbrella. And when I talk about these skills today, these are the skills we're talking about improving. A great way to think about executive functioning is making toast. So I have 2 ADHD brothers and I, God bless my mom, she's an anxious wreck still, but we all fall very high on the hyperactivity scale and we all really struggle with this college transition. But how I kind of like encapsulate and give an example is making toast. So growing up every single morning, my mom would give us a simple task. She would say something along the lines of put some butter on some toast, we're late for some school, and meet me in the car in 5 minutes. She would come back in the house about 10 minutes later and we were wrestling. There was bread everywhere and my youngest brother was just covered in butter. Butter him up and chase him around the house and try to catch him. She thought she was giving us a very simple task. Put some butter on some toast and meet me in the car. When you break down all the steps needed to get from beginning to end, due to our challenges with these executive function skills, we couldn't get there. Of course, there was some rambunctiousness as well. But when we talk about executive function skills, people think they're giving us very simple things, and we have to break it down into small, manageable tasks, provide structure and accountability along the way to get from beginning to end. A lot of professors next year, we know this because we work with them, think they're going to be giving you something very simple. Create a 10, 15-minute presentation, present it to the class on Friday. They'll give you a prompt and say, good luck. What we have to figure out what to do is how to break that task into small, manageable pieces, figure out what accountability and what systems and checkpoints we'll have, and work ourselves there. Sounds easy, but when we're independent for the first time, it's our executive function skills that get us there. So that's what we're going to talk about, how to improve throughout this presentation. There's two mindsets that we've seen land really well with students transitioning from high school to college in developing these skills and really developing that independence. The first one, which I never thought would land, but it lands over and over with our college student, is this discipline equals freedom mindset. So this is a Navy SEAL mindset, which I thought would work with a lot of our students who are athletes, but it actually works with everybody because what we're after when we get to college is as much freedom as possible. The reason we chose the campus we did had something to do with academics, of course, but we also wanted to take time to experience the campus. We wanted more free time with friends, and for extracurriculars, and for everything else. The only way to get there to that freedom is through discipline. So here's what this looks like. 30 minutes of giving up your own free time and going to office hours with the TA or professor, that 30 minutes saves most students an hour and a half to 2 hours on the back end. By the time we initiate the task, by the time we figure out what to study, maintain attention, and complete it, we see this over and over with our students. If you're disciplined enough to give 30 minutes of your free time, you have freedom on the back end. If you're disciplined enough to get a morning movement routine in, some kind of exercise, we see that exercise is performing better right now in clinical studies than Adderall for attention, learning, memory, and retention if you have a neurodiversity. If you're disciplined to get that in the morning, we have tons of freedom on the back end. There's a different feeling going out with friends Friday night when you're completely free and finished with everything versus when you have that nagging voice in the back of your head saying, you have to finish this paper, you have to finish this paper. Our goal is to have as much fun and experience as much at campus as possible. But the only way to get there is through systems and through discipline. So those are a few examples. I can give you a bunch more from sleep and other things, but that's kind of the core concept that our students who enjoy campus the most really have embraced this mindset. Also, when we're talking about these executive function skills, if there is a struggle, most people want to jump right to getting accommodations. Or if you're built like me, you want to download all 50 organizational apps in the iTunes store and then play with each one for a week and then completely forget about it. Now, we know that we need these, whether it's apps or accommodations, if that's relevant to you or not, we need a lot of that stuff. But the most bang for our buck on attention, learning, memory, and retaining the knowledge that we work so hard for is at the bottom of the pyramid. Sleep is the lead domino right now, and it's something that so many of our college students struggle with. So having a routine around sleep, movement, routines, we're going to talk about in a sec, routines and structure. If you can work hard on these on the launch to college and when you get there, have some type of system in place, and I can talk about exactly what that looks like more concretely if needed. But if we take care of the bottom of the pyramid, we see our kids just thrive when they get to school. So this is going to give you the most bang for your buck. You're going to learn and retain the most in the minimum amount of time. Sleep, movement, diet, exercise, and structure are the big ones right there that we really want to focus on, especially freshmen. There's tons of research behind this, and I'm happy to dive into that as much as possible if needed. So those are the two mindsets we really want to focus on to build these executive function skills, whether it's attention, memory, organization, really want to focus on those, the bottom of that pyramid. So here's how we can do this before we get off to college. There's two concrete things that I'd love for everyone to really work on for the remainder of the school year. Being on, that'll give us the most bang for our buck. So the first one is routines. If there is a consistent challenge in your life, a consistent fire, we want to build a routine around that right now and then take that to college with us. So the brain is electric. Electricity flows down the path of least resistance. Once we work hard on something to build it into a routine, well, then it goes on autopilot. So an example of this is if we have a designated workspace on campus. So once we get to school, we know our students that work at the same time, the same location. We see attention improve, learning, memory skyrocket, and then stress and anxiety decreases, not like constantly putting it off towards the next thing. So an example of that would be, I go to the campus coffee shop at noon to 1 every single day, and that's my productivity time. Or I go to the library based on if you like buzz in the background or if you like quiet. I go to the library from 6 to 7 every single night. Our students that do that, they're never that out of control. They always feel like they know what to do and they're working downhill. Having a productivity routine is kind of the basis for everything here. If you see a consistent challenge, whether it's through cleaning your room or getting meal prepping or doing laundry, we want to build a routine around that right now. Set reminders in our phone or in our planner or wherever that looks. I know kids that we work with, every single Sunday at noon, we have a laundry routine. So they go to the laundromat next to campus or in their dorms or however that looks. And that's when we do our laundry every single week. It's something you have to work for the first week or two. And then after that, it just becomes habit. You just fall right in. Research shows us that routines significantly reduce stress and anxiety. Being a freshman is one of the most stressful times that you will have in your life. Also one of the best, most fun times, but there's a lot of stress that comes with it. The way to really decrease that stress is to have routines. Working and developing those routines now is a great place to start so they go on autopilot. Like I spoke about before, increases focus and attention in a huge way, research shows us. If you're disciplined, again, to go to that library from 6 to 7 every single night and use it for productivity and productivity only, and you're disciplined enough not to check your phone during that time, well, you'll have twice as much free time on the back end. So this is always what we're after. Everything we're talking about will be through the lens of transitioning to college and doing well in school, but it's not about school. This is about building confidence and discipline long-term to know that you do hard things, you feel out of control, build a routine around it. So find something that's a challenge for you now, or you anticipate being a challenge when you take a step to the next level, and then build a routine around it. This is something I obviously struggled with, and during my transition, I was always out of control. I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do it later. Clothes were always dirty. I was failing out, had no self-concept. So routines. Research shows us tons of bang for your buck, especially if there is some type of neurodiversity there or some type of anxiety. Here's an example. I am 38 years old. I'm a grown man. I have a family. And here's an example of how I have to set up my life still. I have a bowl. When I walk in the door, I call it my landing pad. Wallet, keys, phone land there. In the morning, it's my launching pad. Scoop it up and go. I can tell you, working with, I think we're darn close to 1,000 college kids now, which is weird for me to say. One of the biggest things that causes a ton of anxiety is losing your key card. We see it over and over and over, the basic stuff. Having a place to put that every single day is essential. Going back to routines for a second. When we talk about being routine-based, a lot of people think it's going to make your life boring because you have all these routines. Well, the opposite happens. If you're not an anxious wreck running around trying to find your key card and your key nonstop, well, a lot of mental space and freedom and enjoyment is up. So this is an example of what I had to have in college. Wallet, keys, phone, and my landing pad. Clothes laid out next to the door. Backpack is packed. If I got to my 8 a.m. class late, it's because I messed up the night before. So that's an example of a routine that I had that helped make me successful in college. Did not make my life boring at all. Actually, opposite. So think about what that routine is now that you can use and that you can fall into something that's a consistent struggle. Another important thing on routines is that we want to do one at a time. When I used to not give that caveat, parents would see this, bring it home. Kids would tell me that I ruined their life because they had all these routines now. We don't want to throw all these routines at once. One at a time, develop that routine, get it on autopilot, and then move on to the next. Fix one thing at a time. So here's an example of an academic routine we see over and over for students that are really successful when they develop that independence. Like I said, when possible, same time, same location. The brain really turns on if you've taken Psych 101, Pavlov's dog, right? If you've used a location for productivity and productivity only, no matter how poor your attention is, like mine, the brain associates it with being very productive and you get a lot done there. The opposite is also true. I know I fight with college kids nearly every day because they want to do their homework in their bed. They complain that they can't focus, and then they also complain that they can't sleep. So productivity place for productivity and productivity. I start my routines, and we recommend we start our routines with mini routines built in. So the first 5 minutes of our academic routine is organization. That's checking through Canvas, D2L, online portals, organizing your inbox because you get a lot of emails, organizing your Google Drive or your OneDrive. No one gets papers anymore, but if that was a thing, organizing that. If you do that every day, it takes about 1 minute to organize electronically, 2 minutes. Then checking teacher websites, and then checking grades. Not to get obsessed with grades, but to make sure that if something goes wrong, something will, that we can fix it when there's one missing before there's 10 missings, because it's a slippery slope for some of us, including myself. I did not do this. I had no self-assessment. I had no metacognition. And when they told me I failed out, I was like, what are you talking about? I had no concept. It was like I was having a great time. I don't know why I have to leave this place. Want to make sure we know exactly where our things are. We want to make sure what's expected of us. We want to make sure we know where we stand. Those three things, and you will thrive academically. So that's routines. Routines, huge bang for your buck on improving these executive function skills and transitioning. The second one is planning. This sounds really simple, but research shows us tons of bang for our bucks. Why we create a plan? So when we're young, or if you have a neurodiversity, we don't think ahead. We're the type of people that we could have a huge research paper due on Friday, we could have the intramural game on Thursday, and we freak out right after intramural game Thursday night because now we got to do this paper. We didn't think ahead, and now we have a little mini crisis on our hands. When we take a look at our week before the week starts, it trains our brain to really think ahead, and it decreases procrastination because we see what's coming and we can break that large task like making toast to small manageable pieces. Also, tons of studies show planning significantly reduces stress and anxiety. So in a concrete way, here's how this looks right now for the remainder of your time in high school. A lot of families I've seen do it really well. It's at the kitchen table, 6 p.m. on a Sunday night. We are looking ahead of our week and planning as best as we can. That could be in a planner, could be on a Google Calendar, which is what I use. It could be on any, it doesn't matter what the system is. The best systems are the systems that we update every single day. So that's why we plan. Huge bang for our buck. A couple reminders when you're planning. Teacher websites and grade portals, obviously they get updated frequently, so you do the best you can at the beginning of the week, and also start to put in a time estimate now. I know something that we see a lot is we want to develop an understanding of how long things take. Sometimes I misgauge that, and a lot of us, when we're as independents, we misgauge how long things take. So if we start estimating it now, we can see if we are correct. And if not, we can start to hone that in so we know exactly how long things will take us. Take notes of big tests and quizzes, break them into small manageable pieces, and then also schedule in office hours. Now that you are going to be independent, we also have to schedule in doctor's appointments, chores, extracurriculars, laundries, things like that for the week. So it goes academics and then personal stuff as well. Just a quick note, if you do have an attention challenge or anxiety is something that you have struggled with, I know my attention is a depleting resource. So what I have to do is I have to front load my week, meaning most teachers put quizzes, tests, big papers, presentations due on Friday. What we want to do is we want to front load that and do the heavy lifting on Monday or Tuesday. For me, I get worn down as the week goes on, especially when you're new to independence. There's a lot of new things coming at you. If we can front load it, it also gives us some bumper room in case things go wrong, but our attention is strongest at the beginning of the week for a lot of us. And then while you're still in high school, we want to build in accountability checkpoints. So we see this all the time where people create this beautiful plan, but we don't follow up, we don't check it. So what are those reminders to check it? And what are those positives that happen while you're still living at home? How do we build in positives when you get through Monday or Tuesday, that dopamine hit? And what's the accountability if you don't get through that plan or that day or however you set it up? So it's 2 pats on the back, 1 kick in the tail. Build up positives here so we keep coming back and planning, but also we want to have that accountability. And what does that look like if we don't get things done? Could look like you didn't finish your Tuesday math homework. You have to go to Wednesday office hours. Want to start to build this up. Research shows us huge bang for your buck for planning. I won't spend too much time on this, but you can see how this is a kid who was an AP type student around me in Boulder, Colorado, at a very, AP student, varsity basketball player. We're starting to build this stuff in. It looks overwhelming, but we're only looking at 1 day at a time. Broke it down electronically where they can only see 1 day at a time. This does 2 things. Prevents procrastination, that we're finding is an emotional state. Prevents procrastination. And then also when we're done with our plan, the message is turn off, go have fun with your friends. Turn off, go do something that you love, right? So that's how we planned out the student, but front load it as much as possible. I went through a lot right there. What executive functioning is, mindsets for independence, and then the 2 biggest things that we can do right now. What questions do you guys have?
Brandon,
Okay,
that was
folks,
awesome.
Yeah, so much information.
I'm taking notes for my students, but also for myself.
A lot of hard lessons in this presentation. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, folks, if you have a question, certainly feel free to either drop it in the chat or come off mute and ask. Brandon, I have a question myself, and I don't know if you want to try to take a shot at this one, but we have parents here and students tonight, kind of a mix of folks, and I think the parents might be wondering, I see my student struggling with routines or struggling with planning now, even in high school. What do you view the parent role in that equation, and how can a parent, what is the best way to engage with their student around those things so that they can maybe start to develop the habits before college does begin?
Good question. That was actually in 2 more slides, but great question. I'll answer it now. So the goal is if we're struggling, there's a famous basketball coach, John Wooden, if anybody's a sports fan. Many people regard him as the best basketball coach or the best coach of all time. Won like 12 national championships at UCLA in the 70s and 80s. He had the best athletes in the country at the time. And the first day he taught people how to put on their shoes and socks and tie them in a way that they wouldn't get blisters. He went really slow and then went really fast. That's kind of the mindset we want here. 80% of the time, we estimate 80% of the time when something is done wrong, it's due to incompetence, not knowing what to do. Then 20%, it's just disobedience. We don't want to do it. But for parents, that 80% we can work on. So if we don't know how to plan, which by the way, they don't teach us in school, it may sound ridiculous. Want to help our kids, we want to help them develop that plan for the first time or 2, give them structure, and then completely back off. Same thing with routines. So structure, understand it's just for the short term, and then once they have it, back off completely. 2 pats on the back, 1 kick in the tail to reinforce that routine or reinforce that planning. Lots of love and lots of accountability. And for students here, we have to be humble enough to know that it's really hard to do this with our parents right now. We're 17, 18. And just to know that we're doing this to really increase independence in the long run. Trying to open up twice as much freedom for you. I still get defensive. I'm 38. My mom was like, hey, eat vegetables the other day. And I was like, no. It's still a part of me. I hate it, but it is what it is. Any other questions about the biggest bang for our buck, the two biggest things we can do to develop these skills and be ready for the independence? Hi, Deborah.
Hi, so I have a question. So parent and child are both here. So as our kids go off to college, do you have strategies for how we can respectfully check in with them to see how the skill set is being developed without being overbearing?
What a great question. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, if you take the time to develop the skills now, and they understand, again, coming back to that incompetence versus disobedience thing, they really understand what to do, whether it's a routine or planning. I think just a simple check-in, like, hey, don't forget that it's Sunday. Make sure, or did you do your planning? Don't forget to do your planning. And then just leave it, because if they know what to do and they know how to do it, well, then they just have to do it. Lots of love, and that's that. But yeah, just making sure they have the skills up front, I think, is very important. And then just giving them a few reminders along the way. But great question. Just a quick side note on that question too. My background and my specialty is ADHD, which people may not have here, but the typical student with ADHD, the typical kid, gets 10,000 more negative comments than positive comments by the age of 10. And then it just goes up exponentially from there. That's a huge reason why we get so defensive. So giving the skills and then really taking the time to positive reinforce that works really well for most teenagers, ADHD or not. But that's just kind of my specialty, my wheelhouse. Awesome. Well, I will jump back in. So there's planning and routines. The second thing too is a lot of times we don't teach our kids how to do college. And there may be something on campus, like they do, a lot of RAs will do something like a how to do college thing, and they brush through things quick. There's a few things we can do that we've seen, again, a ton of return on investment for the last semester or the last quarter or however that looks. So we're talking about how to do college. There's skills that aren't explicitly taught that we can work on right now to be very successful. Again, going slow to go fast. Give them the skills up front, back off. The number one thing that I hear is my kid doesn't know how to study. Or from kids, they're like, I know how to study, and they get to college like, I don't really know how to study. So here's what the research shows us on how to study. First thing is short, frequent study sessions. It's best practice for everybody. It's essential if you have a neurodiversity. So what this looks like, just a very basic example, is if you're taking a Spanish class or something where there's a lot of memorization, and you have a test on Friday, studying 10 minutes per day, that vocab, get the information from short-term to long-term memory versus trying to cram it the night before. So studies show us 10 minutes per day. That's 40 minutes leading up to the test. You learn the material and you're able to get it to long-term memory, and kids did much better on that type of studying than trying to cram for an hour or 2 hours the night before. Again, going back to that discipline equals freedom mindset, how this plays out, you're studying less time and you're retaining the information more. Short, frequent study sessions versus trying to bomb Red Bulls the night before a midterm or a test or something like that. Short, frequent study sessions is the way to go here. Next one is active studying. So I know a trap that I fall into, that a lot of kids we've seen fall into as well, a lot of students, is they're passively just repeating the material, repeating it over and over to themselves. If you give the brain a reason to remember something, it will remember something. My favorite active studying technique that we're actually working with a lot of professors on incorporating it more is the note card or one pager. So this plays out really well, especially in high level dense subjects. So if you're in a calculus 3 and you have a chapter assessment, there's a lot of material there. If you can take all that material and you can fit it onto a note card, when a professor says you can bring a note card for this test, or you may have had a high school teacher like this. If you can fit all that material onto a note card or a one-page sheet of paper before the test, you get it. Taking all this information, being able to synthesize it is one of the ultimate forms of learning. The second one is being able to teach it to someone else. You're going to meet a lot of new people. Everyone wants to do well in school. If you can take a ton of information and get it into a small area, that means you understand it. Same thing with the ability to teach it to someone else. Those are the two best active studying techniques. The other one is metacognition. We'll talk more about that in a second. Figuring out what time of day that you learn best and what type of environments you learn best. If you can do that right now, you'll be light years ahead of your peers before you go off to college. The best way to do that is just through asking yourself a lot of questions. If you get an A on the test now, your second semester, senior year, if you get an A on a calculus test, it's asking yourself the question, okay, what time of day did I study? Did I study in a loud quiet environment or a quiet environment? Did I study after I moved? Asking yourself a ton of questions, you'll start to see patterns and you'll start to pick up how you learn things very quickly. I have multiple graduate degrees and I read at like a 4th grade level because my attention is too poor. I figured out later on that I could do everything through Audible, stop every 10 minutes, take notes, and then keep walking. When I pace around my block over and over, that's how I acquire information. When you start to stumble on how you acquire information, keep in mind there is no good, there is no bad, it is what it is. That's what we do. My way of reading is no different, better or worse than someone else's way of reading. It is what it is. So those are the best things. Those are the best ways how to study. Highly recommend the note part of the one-pager, even if a professor does not permit it on the test. Again, you can take all this information, you can figure out a way to make it small, really understand it. The next one, and this is the one that I'm actually the most passionate about, is advocating. We always tell our kids, talk to your professor, talk to your TA. You got to advocate. You got to speak up for yourself. And then we don't. And people realize why we don't. Usually it's because we don't know how. We don't know what we're asking for. So before we go off to college, second semester or the summer before, this may feel a little weird, but role playing. This could even be done over the phone freshman year. Role playing how to talk to your professor before you do it. How to walk up to someone in an intimidating environment with your shoulders back, your head high, and clearly and respectfully communicating your needs. I can't tell you how much from the other side professors really appreciate that as well. So it takes a lot of practice. And again, this is done through the lens of school, but it's not really about school. Role playing how to talk to professors, TAs. We do this in like hard, if you get into a pinch with a roommate or something like that. Role playing and practicing, or even practicing on your high school teachers now, is like one of the most essential skills that you have that carries over. Another huge thing that drives other people on the other side nuts is how to email your professor respectfully or email your TA respectfully. So we can send this presentation out if you guys like, but here's an example of one. Just having a bank or like something in your back pocket, keeping it in your drafts of your email with how to respectfully email a professor or someone at the university. Very much appreciated, a skill that most freshmen don't have. So practicing that and just keeping one in your drafts in your inbox has been really, really helpful. So that is something I highly recommend as well. So going back really quick, learning how to do school, how to study, how to talk to a professor, how to email a professor, or how to email disciplinary services, or how to email someone who's running an extracurricular, something like that. Having that all set up before you leave, very, very helpful. What can we do over this summer? Summer's such a tricky time after your senior year because you want to have fun and you should, right? It's your last semester. Most people in high school kind of scatter and go to different places, but so you want to have fun and you want to make the most of it, but we also need to understand that we can't go from nothing over the summer to 100 miles per hour when we step foot on campus, especially during the transition. So we have to find that bridge in the middle. So here's what we can do. First of all, to block out early in the summer, we want to do a few things. And I know this sounds like torture to a lot of us in June or July to like start thinking ahead of school and things like that. But here's a few things we can do early in the summer. Looking at college resources, when you're touring schools and looking at their pamphlets and their websites, these college resource pages look phenomenal. When you are a student on campus, they can be unbelievably overwhelming. I was just looking at Arizona State the other day. We needed help on an econ paper. We looked at the resources online, and it was like 4 pages long of places to get academic help at Arizona State. We were paralyzed. We had no idea what to do. So looking ahead and bookmarking this page somewhere on your laptop or your Chromebook or whatever you're taking off to school, bookmarking, if I struggle with a paper, where do I go? If I struggle, if I need some mental health help, where do I go? If I need help on a presentation, where do I go? Having that planned out before you step foot on campus, I cannot tell you how helpful that is and how much that decreases anxiety. Knowing exactly where you're going to go, because if you're trying to look it up for the first time, it's a little overwhelming, as in it's a lot overwhelming, especially if you're overwhelmed already with something academic or something else. Having your kid or your student, or if your student's here, actually planning what you need to go off to school with, or what you need to pick up when you get there. Making that first list is going to be a little ugly, and there's going to be a lot of things that we miss, but then we know exactly what to pick up. If we need to be fitted for a nice jacket, if whatever we need, we have this summer to do that. So we're not scrambling around at the end of the summer and showing up to campus anxious. So taking time at the beginning of the summer to plan out what you're going to take, what you need to pick up before school starts. This is one that I'm so passionate about. Emailing before you get to campus, emailing if you don't already have an extracurricular plan, if you're not an athlete or into music or theater or something like that, having 5 to 7 clubs and activities that you've already emailed before you go off to school is really important. We know that having a crew on campus, having some type of connection to campus is one of the biggest indicators of student success and retention. Having a club or 5 that you walk on, that you try out right away, knowing that 3 of them may not work out and being okay with that before we get there, having that all planned out before you show up in some capacity, or even just taking the time to research it, it's really, really helpful. They may not answer their emails over the summer, but that's fine. We know that we're going to try out these 2 or 3 clubs. Planning that out before we go is a great way to do things. And then some professors, some crazy professors, actually have some course content and books and things like that posted. Not super common, but if it is common, having that in your Amazon shopping cart. And so getting ready to do where you can just click the buy now button and then everything comes to you. Getting as much set up as we can is very helpful. We spoke about routines. And I know I'm kind of rushing through this a little bit, but our time is short. We want to have fun over the summer and have obviously much less structure than we did during the school year, but we can't go from nothing to expecting to be really functional in college on day 1. So we want to have some type of routines around, if you work, obviously there's the job, something academic, whether that's a reading time every day, whether that's figuring out how you're going to build out your calendar or whatever, something academic towards the middle of July on, so your brain is ready to go and you're not expecting to ramp up completely overnight. So something academic, some type of routine, same time, same location would be best practice if that is possible. Getting really good at your basics, exercise, sleep, getting ready to step foot on campus because it could be overwhelming right away. So starting to build in those routines before we leave. Having reminders in our phone or wherever else for things like laundry, whatever else you need to do every single week. For some of us, it's therapy, or it's medication daily, or something. Building in those reminders before we go, and then just the one that students are the biggest on, as they should be, is that social piece. So if we get everything done, what is that social routine? What does that look like over summer? So we are ready to go. I always give this last one. This is less of a transition thing and more of like a life thing, because I'm so passionate about this one as well, especially for very high achieving kids. There's a lot coming out in neuropsych right now that mirrors exercise science. So most people know that if you go to the weight room and lift very heavy, or you go run a half marathon, you have to let your muscles rest in order to achieve maximum growth. We're finding the same thing with the brain. Best way to do it is to bust your tail studying on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being doing nothing, sleeping essentially, and 10 being like focusing as hard as you can. We want to stress, meaning not like anxiety, but we want to work it as hard as we can in our study sessions. So focus as hard as we can and then completely back off and rest. Give yourself, a 20-minute brain break, even from things like your phone or a screen or something like that. That's when we see maximum growth in the brain. That's when we see maximum learning, and that's when we avoid burnout. Developing that kind of habit for the rest of the school year and over the summer. Again, you learn efficiently, you learn effectively, and we decrease burnout. So this is the one that I'm really passionate, which I like to end on. Any questions about what I just went through? Easy, only a few more minutes. If you feel like you need any help with this, most people are good to go, but if you feel like you need any help, we help with this stuff over the end of the summer. I'm sure they'll link this. Lululemon sponsors it. We're sponsored by them. So first 50 people that sign up get a free yoga mat to go to college to remind them how important wellness is, but helping set up these routines, role playing with your professors. We work with students on this if you feel like you just kind of need that extra little bump.
Yeah. Brandon, will you actually just talk a little bit more about the boot camp? Because we think this is such an exciting opportunity to get like a pretty concise kind of crash course, right? To really feel ready, reduce that anxiety, and increase that sense of preparation. So will you just talk a little bit about kind of what that's all about?
Yeah. So it's 8 hours long. It's 2 hours a day for 4 days. And we try to give students the skills that they need to be successful with that transition. When you show up on campus, things are overwhelming. So in this boot camp, we go over, we've downloaded a bunch of college syllabuses. So how to read a syllabus. We start setting up their actual routines, building out their actual Google Calendar, setting goals, setting in accountability checkpoints. Want to make sure we role play how to talk to professors, give them email scripts. So when they are feeling overwhelmed, they have something to come back to. Basically, it's setting you up with that discipline piece. So when you set foot on campus, we want you to really enjoy campus. This is going to be the biggest transition for most of us in our lives, from all this structure to very little structure. And so we want to take a week. It starts mid-July, and try to get kids a week or two before they go off to school. We just want to give them the skills to be successful, and so they can really enjoy campus during this huge transition. So that's what the boot camp is. My email is here as well. Sometimes people have personal questions. If there is a neurodiversity, don't hesitate to reach out. We've transitioned tons of kids off to every type of college. So just let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon. Folks, we're going to send out this information to you if you're here and in the next couple of days, as well as putting the recording from this session on our membership library. For those of you that are members of the Best You, you'll be able to access this video. If you're not a member of the Best You and you'd like to become one, please reach out to hello@thebestyou.net, and we'd be happy to guide you through that process, or to me or Lauren directly. And we'd be happy to help. If you'd like a copy of this video and you are not a member of the Best You can also reach out to one of us and we'll get that to you. But thank you so much for being here, everybody, and for spending some time with us tonight. It's been a great presentation. I appreciate all this awesome information from Brendan. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great night. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Brandon. This is great.